I looked at Willie, really looked at him, maybe for the first time since we were boys. I really took it all in. His familiar scowl, which had always been his default in his dealings with me. His alarming baldness, even more advanced than my own. His famous resemblance to Mummy, which was fading with time, with age. And that's how I think I'll introduce what we're going to talk about today, which is obviously the Harry interviews that we've just had to endure.
Sounds to me like good old sibling rivalry, all from Harry, not from William. But quite frankly, who cares who went bald first? And what it sounds to me there like he's jealous that William looked more like his mother than he did. He looks very much like his father.
Yeah, I mean, that was my takeaway, definitely. And absolutely, I mean, what is the purpose of having to put that out there in a book that everyone's going to read, because it's going to be the bestseller, obviously. And it's just unnecessarily nasty. And, we've both got siblings with, we've probably had issues with them over the years. And of course, that's fine and understandable. And obviously, this is going to be quite a central theme to what the takeaway was from the interview about the whole purpose of it all and the book, is that sibling situation. But either way, I don't see how it's beneficial for you to just put something out there so nasty. And it's just the bitterness of it is exactly how you just mentioned. He's like, his famous resemblance to Mummy. It's like, that just, screams really bitter to me.
It is definitely the keynote. But to be honest, Meghan doesn't speak to any of her siblings, so why should Harry have that luxury? He's an idiot, a profound idiot, a court jester, if you like, to slander somebody, and it is slander, because we don't know what happened. This is his version. There's 3 sides to every story, yours, theirs, and the truth. All we're getting right now is Harry's. But to publicly shame somebody and to comment on somebody's looks, especially after you've given all these interviews, all these documentaries, and one of Meghan's favourite things to say is, be kind. Are they kind? Is he kind? Well, that was very unkind from Harry. I don't see what William's looks have got anything to do with it. It's obviously from a bitter point of view.
Yeah.
But the whole thing screams to me not redemption, not freedom, but the whole thing screams bitterness to me.
Mm-hmm.
Every word he's saying in those interviews seems bitter and contrived and has a narrative. I mean, he keeps on saying, oh, they spin this narrative, that's exactly what he's doing. He's spinning a narrative, but he's not getting away with it. And the reason he's not getting away with it is because he has said so much and done so many interviews beforehand that contradict everything he's saying now.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, absolutely. And there's so much contradiction, and it's just a cacophony of contradictions, and the whole thing, it's one after the other, and he contradicts himself in the whole thing. So the Lady Hussey thing came up in the interview, and obviously that's not going to make it in the book because that would have been before, but how the Ngozi Fulani controversy, which proved to be not really much of a controversy. It was clearly just a bit of a misunderstanding. I'm actually gonna say it was a misunderstanding, just to be generous. In my opinion, it was probably a lot more to it than that, in terms of the actual Ngozi Fulani lady, who's got about 5 or 6 or 7 different names, and there's been some talk about her being investigated by the charity, the governing body. What's it called now? Anyway, it's basically the ones who make sure that all the charities are legit. There's been a calls for her charity Sister's Face to be investigated. Anyway, separate thing. Point is, you're trying to sort of defend characters that you're not actually wholly informed about, that maybe have got a little bit more to them, just because it fits a certain narrative that you're trying to weave. Anyway, he said about Lady Hussey. And she was very unfairly dismissed, because even if we do believe the full version of events that came from the questionable Lady Ngozi Fulani person, it still wasn't worth what the repercussions were. And yet Harry then just was like, oh, well, she's lovely. Me and Meghan love her. She's great. But she does need to work on her unconscious bias. It's like, okay, well, so he's like, I love her, but she's racist, basically. That's what he's saying, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, you can make what you will of that situation. Again, we weren't there. We don't know the full story, but I think at the most it would have been unconscious bias.
At the very most, at the extreme most.
At the extreme most, yeah. Because let's not forget that this particular lady has worked there for how many decades?
6.
6 decades. She would have seen all manner of people. They've hosted visitors from everywhere, so she would have seen like Chinese political powers, Japanese, African presidents, prime ministers, people from Arab Emirates that have been there, people from literally all over the world. So she would have, and this is the first case in 6 decades that anything's ever been said about her. At the very, very, very most, it would have been unconscious bias. But I didn't even think it was that. I think she was trying to ascertain the heritage, and she perhaps said it in the wrong way.
Potentially, yeah.
But yeah, so he said that, oh, we love her. But then, spent the other interviews on Netflix and the other interviews with other people trashing the entire institution. And he does this consistently. It's like, I want a family, not an institution. But your family are that. And I'm not going to call it an institution because it makes it sound like an insane asylum. I don't think it is that. But his family are the royal family. So he can't have both. And at the end of the day, he has said in these interviews that he loves the family, he loves his country, he believes in the royals as continuing, but then at the same time he doesn't want them in it. We can't have both of those things. It's a complete and utter contradiction, and that's all he ever seems to do is just contradict. He talks in this about the press weaving a certain narrative, and that's exactly what he's doing, his own narrative. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what happened. He knows that his brother will not talk about it, so we've only got his side of the story. And it's almost like we're supposed to believe his side of the story or nothing else. But it doesn't ring true for me at all. I don't think... There's got to be some truth in it, but the truth, I think, of the situation, like, I believe that him and William probably did have a row. Whether or not William broke his necklace, pushed him to the floor, and whatever else, I don't know. At the end of the day, memory is malleable. I mean, William might have grabbed him, and then Harry might have tripped on something. You don't know that. You don't know that for certain. I certainly don't believe that Camilla Parker Bowles was leaking stories, and I am not Camilla Parker Bowles' biggest fan. I'm not. But I don't think, other than the affair, I don't think she's done anything that's particularly bad since she's been a royal. But also she doesn't speak, and he said there was this narrative of her trying to better herself in the eyes of the British public and in the press. Look, that probably would have been done in regards to Charles and with Charles's blessing as well, because at the end of the day he wanted to marry her, so it was favourable for the public to maybe not want that, because that's the wrong word, but not really care whether he does or he doesn't. But I don't think that would have come from Camilla, but at the same time, I don't remember any good press about Camilla. There has been so much bad press, but there was no redeeming press. I don't think I've ever seen a story where Camilla's been in the headline if it wasn't something bad or embarrassing. they just kind of, the
No.
headlines just kind of went away. So for him to say, oh, she went on this big tyrant of trying to get the public on side, I don't recall that at all.
No. I mean, it was, like I say, just sort of went away. There was no, like, huge redemption, like, oh, the new Camilla, or she's never been celebrated as such. It's slightly more positive in tone now than it certainly has been, in the past. Definitely. But no, there wasn't some sort of complete reimagining of the whole thing. And, like, it's weird with him, when you see about his contradictions and things like that. It totally comes down to the core, and I picked this up from the trailers. I will say he came off slightly better from what I expected. From the trailers to the interview, he came off slightly better than I expected him to. Just because his personality is still there, underneath the layers of, nonsense on top of it that Meghan's managed to kind of add to. She's managed to just bring out the worst in him, and I'm not putting the whole blame on her because I don't think that's necessarily fair either. He's an agent; he's got free agency, to do what he wants to do. However, there's certainly he admitted himself in interviews that he's changed, and obviously she's the catalyst for that, so you can't ignore it either. Anyway, so he just wants the family. He wants the family, but none of the real stuff, none of the accoutrements that come with it. The institution, he keeps calling it the institution. I'm on your side with that. I don't like the terminology. I feel it's got connotations purposefully attached to that institution thing. But anyway, he doesn't want that sort of side of it. He just wants the family. Okay, then let's just say that's what you want. That's your words, right? Now, I'm a firm believer in action speaking much louder than words. His actions are that he is bashing his family, not the institution. He's obviously going for the press side of it and the press secretaries and things, but he's actually attacking his stepmother, right? He's attacking his uncle is mentioned. Fair enough. You can make of that what you will. I accept that. There's obviously some serious issues that need to be addressed there. But his father's had criticism from him. But the one that's really, really seriously difficult to take is his brother. Obviously, Kate got the brunt of it all as well, but his brother's got the big chunk of it, right? So he's doing that to his family members, his relatives, as relatives, right? And what isn't he doing? Well, he isn't getting rid of his titles. Now, to me, that's like your words say that you want your family, but you don't want the institution, but your actions say that you don't want your family, but you want the institution.
That's the first thing that I'd get rid of out of pure spite.
Yeah.
I would be like, fine, you don't want, we can't live the way that we want to live, so you can take your titles and, shove them where the sun don't shine, to be honest. But he's refused, and what did that guy, what's the guy in America?
Yeah, Anderson Cooper. So obviously the one that we had, we were subjected to like an hour and a half long one, but the States, I think they only had one that was like 30 minutes, which I just checked out. And that one, he was asked directly, well, why haven't you relinquished the titles? People will ask why you haven't. And absolutely everyone is asking that question. And his response basically to it was, well, what would be the point in that? And what's frustrating is Anderson Cooper didn't really push back on that. Now, if you interview, you don't generally ask the interviewer the questions, and if you do, that normally indicates that you're being defensive. If you're asking an interviewer a question to a question, that totally denotes that you're being defensive. That's a very big giveaway. Unfortunately, Anderson didn't seem to pursue it. I'm imagining there might have been some sort of stipulations around the interview where you can only sort of go to a certain level. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given it, because technically it was an interview, but it was more of a promotional tour disguised as an interview, really, wasn't it? So they wouldn't have obviously been able to do like the deep dives into it too much. But what do you think to that answer? Like, you answer his question, and so what would be the point in that?
It's completely invasive. He's answering it, but not answering it. He's answering the question with a question. I would have had a lot more respect for them if they did relinquish him. Now, I want them to, but I wouldn't give them any respect for it. I just think, they should do now. Because you're going to look like hypocrites if you don't.
Yeah.
And he's like, what's the point in that? I mean, he said that to dodge the question, but which obviously means that he wants them still. That's why they've got them, because they want them still. And I think they want them still for 2 reasons, actually. One, because they want them. And 2, because they can use it as a tool. Because if they keep on and keep on and keep on and get stripped of the titles, that's more money in their pocket because they'll have a reaction to getting stripped. If they manage to keep hold of them, it's still a bargaining chip. But for me, I would have given them so much more respect if they'd got rid of them. So much more.
Yeah. I could say, like, it is true. You're right. Like I said, the answer to that question, which I still feel like Anderson should have pursued, he should have said, like, well, the purpose would be that you are saying that you don't want to be in part of the institution, yet you're keeping the absolute solid connection to said royal family, the royal side of things, by keeping those titles. And I think you are correct. It is for the prestige of having that title because it does add weight to any event. You know, when they do attend events, they are announced as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, not announced as Harry and Meghan. You know, even though, give them some credit. Harry and Meghan is a very, very strong brand at the moment in terms of like, oh, we've got Harry and Meghan. But that's just a brand. Like, the prestige is the titles, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. No, I would hate to live in Sussex, by the way. I'm thinking, like, well, how are these people, like, walking around, swanning around, making all this money off of our county, basically, using it as the titles? I wouldn't appreciate that if I was from Sussex. But that's what they need. They need the prestige because then they can attend these galas and they can attend these events and these public engagements with that kind of air of importance, which obviously I can't see Meghan wanting to give away willingly. I think Harry would if she asked him to, because everything seems to revolve around that fact. But yeah, Anderson should have pushed back more on that.